A lot of talk about the Vikings taking a corner in round one, but what if they don't do that? Or maybe they even want to double up in day two. Who are those day two guys? We're going to break down three of them here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that on 3, 1, 2, 3, you like it!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. You can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Thank you so much to my everydayers who listen to this show each and every day. Love y'all. You can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, including YouTube or even Amazon Fire or Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. And today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise, then this game is definitely for you. Just download the game at ultimate-gm.com, or you can just look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game. So I've talked a whole bunch on this show about Devin Witherspoon, Joey Porter, Christian Gonzalez, these first round guys, right? These first round corners. And I think of those three names, would be pretty surprising if any of them actually ended up as Vikings. The Vikings probably have to trade up. I don't really see them falling that far. Worth talking about because, never say never. And also you just kind of have to know the class, but we're mostly, we're more talking about like Cam Smith and stuff. But there are a bunch of other guys that are kind of in that next tier that I want to talk about. The first one I think will go in the first round and might actually be a viable option at 23, but I have not talked about him much, so I'm sort of lumping him in with this one. And that is Deonte Banks out of Maryland. I will also go into DJ Turner out of Michigan and Clark Phillips from Utah. Deonte Banks is where I want to start. I'm going to kind of do this in like descending order of size. But here's the thing with Deonte Banks, and I really don't know where he's going to go. It wouldn't shock me to see him go round one, but it also wouldn't shock me to see him fall out of round one because I think he's a lot rawer than he's getting credit for right now. I think a lot of people are looking at him as this guy that tested really well, good body, 6 foot, crosses the size thresholds, really great guy, ran like a 4.35 or something like that. Good agility, scores an explosion and all that stuff. Great tester. And I think with all of these corners, look, you can't really make an argument that Deonte Banks is anything more than, cornerback 4 in this class without having like a really, really hot take about Gonzalez or Witherspoon or Joey Porter, right? Those are kind of your big three. And once you're the fourth corner off the board, there's a really decent chance that you fall way further because how many teams are going to draft a corner in the first round, right? There are lots of drafts where 4 corners don't go in the first round. So it's something to keep in mind. I don't think that that's going to happen with Banks, honestly, if I had to guess. But let me talk to you about Banks in a more practical sense. He has unbelievably smooth hips. Honestly, all three of the guys I'm talking about today have great hip transitions. When it's time to turn your hips and run, there's not a lot of wasted motion there. It's not clunky or stiff at all. And that's really exciting. There are lots of moments when you can just see the speed and athleticism on display. And there are a lot of moments where he'll screw stuff up. He'll take a wrong step. He'll mess something up. But just on the basis of having great recovery speed, he'll burst right back into the play, get back in phase. And that is enough to make you a starting corner most of the time. But here is where my concerns with Deonte Banks come. There are a lot of nitpicks, a lot of really small stuff, and I want to try not to overreact to all that small stuff. I have a Patreon video at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL about him that goes over these in more detail. I won't bore you with every single one of them now because there's like 4 or 5 of them. But I'll just say right now, technique nitpicks, little things about the way he starts a play, for example, the way he aligns himself. I think the biggest issues come when he's trying to break forward on the ball, when he's trying to transition from a back pedal to forward motion, doing like a T-step or a 45-degree step or whatever you want to call those techniques. but the footwork where you have to go from backward momentum, plant a foot behind you, push off and go, right? That takes a certain athleticism that I don't know is captured very well by the tests that Deonte Banks really struggles with to get kind of going there. And so he can lose to curls and stuff. It's not unlike the problem Keely Ringo has. I don't think it's quite as pronounced as the problem Keely Ringo has there. And Ringo has other issues as well that sort of exacerbate it. But it is something, and I think with Banks, a lot of it just comes from like a cascade from how he sets himself up and some of those other tiny little nitpicks that I'll talk about on the Patreon video if you want. So that's one thing. It's in particular breaking on the ball on like quick game or short game. What I want to see him do, and I think Maryland was just having him play man coverage, but what I want to see him do, especially when he's in off, is put his eyes on the QB. Even when he's in man during like camp, I want him to practice this. Most quarterbacks will rehearse the hell out of their quick game. You think about it. I mean, that quick game should be very rhythmic. It should be, whatever the cadence of it, it should be near musical. You should be able to set your watch by it, right? And that's something you can kind of exploit because no other footwork looks like quick game footwork. You're not going to see quarterbacks on deep developing plays do quick game footwork just to mess with you. They're trying to get their feet set and deliver an accurate ball. They got way more important things to worry about than like bluffing quick game. Unless it's something like a specific double move thing. And you'll just kind of have to be wary of that on tape study. But even if you do get burned on that, it's pretty rare. So it's usually worth it to plant your feet in off coverage. In press, you can't really get away with this. But in off coverage, you can plant your feet, get your eyes on the quarterback. And if you give yourself enough cushion where if it is a go route, that receiver can't get up to you in the time it would take for a 3-step drop. We're talking the first like second-ish of the play. You can watch that quarterback's feet. And if he lines up like it's quick game, you can break on that thing and you can make a play. So I love to see that. And of the 3 corners we're talking about today, Deonte Banks, TJ Turner, Clark Phillips, Deonte Banks is the only one who doesn't do that. And some of that's schematic. It's a lot easier in zone when you kind of have your eyes on the quarterback anyways. Like at Michigan, DJ Turner played a lot of zone match and was able to do that. But that is something I would love for Deonte Banks to work on. And then in just sort of a general sense, awareness. There's a lot of bozo moments where he sort of loses, he panics. That's what it is. When the ball is coming, even if he's in phase and he's in great position, he'll panic, he'll grab, he'll tug, he'll tackle, he'll freeze up. There's a play where he kind of just freezes up right in the middle of the route stem and he gets bowled over, grabs a dude's ankle, takes him down with him, and earns a flag. That's the kind of stuff we can't have, right? So I think that there's some rehearsed stuff that Deonte Banks is really good at. And I like that, okay, if he can get really good at stuff by rehearsing it, we just needed to give him the time to rehearse other stuff. Like I really love what that kind of shows about his ability to develop a game, to learn steps, learn technique. But there are a lot of techniques that I think are just missing from his repertoire that for me put him below, the Gonzalez's and the Devin Witherspoons who have like really, really polished technique. But also I think it puts him below somebody like Cam Smith, who might not be as good of he's a good athlete, but Deonte Banks is a great athlete. But Cam Smith is just a little more put together. His game is more put together. There's a lot of work that I have to do with Deonte Banks to get him there. So that's why I have him below that. But I still have him as the 5th best corner on the team. And I do want to talk about the other guys, DJ Turner and Clark Phillips. But before I do so, look, if you want to play pretend, be a GM, why don't you download Ultimate Football GM? It's my new favorite phone game. And I love the screenshots that y'all have been sending me of just absolute absurdity. I got a screenshot of somebody who is 100 years into their franchise, which like your grandchildren are now running the team, I guess, winning consecutive Super Bowls all the time. It is, I guess, a very breakable game. So if you love the satisfaction of just like ripping off, 13 win season after 13 win season after 13 win season, It's also, don't give up on your franchise in Ultimate Pro Football GM. I've seen people talk about how they were, super, super deep in cap trouble, but then they were able to pull out of it and still have a respectable year and, win the Super Bowl 2 years later and all that. Ultimate Football GM is a franchise simulator. It is, draft picks, signing free agents, working on contracts and the salary cap, hiring the right staff, and then hoping that your team can go off and win games. So if that is the kind of thing that is interesting to you, go to ultimate-gm.com, and Locked On listeners get a 100% free boost by entering promo code Locked On at the game store. That is promo code Locked On at the game store. You can either just search out Ultimate Pro Football GM on the App Store and download it, or go to ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM, start your dynasty today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. Next up, I want to talk about DJ Turner, but first, real quick, next week is the last week we have before actual draft week. So it'll be more kind of similar content, Mock Draft Monday, Twitter Tuesday, and all that stuff. On the actual week of the draft, things will be a little different, so make sure you tune in. I'll do a kind of full big board for quarterback, cornerback, and wide receiver. Those are the positions I've done the most work on. Everything else will be a little bit more informed by like osmosis and consensus. And then I will also do my annual day 3 contest where everybody tell me your day 3 crushes, save them, hold them. I'll ask for them that week. Get me your day 3 draft crushes, and the winner will get this football card. It's in cardboard. I want it to stay nice, but this football card not signed, but it's a Carl Eller football card. I'll mail it to you. It came with a thing I bought, so you get that. Let's move on to DJ Turner. DJ Turner is a Michigan corner. A lot of people say he's a nickel. I don't really understand why. He played a lot outside, played a lot of nickel. He rotated around. I think he can very clearly play both. I actually think it's one of the main draws of him is that he can play both. If you're just saying he's just a nickel, I'd be really curious to hear why, because I don't really see anything about his game that makes me concerned about whether or not he can play outside, like specifically. There's stuff in his game that I don't love. And I guess people are saying this is because he's skinny. He's 5'11", 180. A little on the smaller side, but for me, that'll play. That it's a weakness, but not a deal breaker. That's that skinniness, and 5'11" height wise is plenty good for me. I think we get to a place with nickels. Nickels aren't supposed to that's not just where you dump short corners anymore. You have big slots, guys in the slot all the time. Positions are a lot more variable. I think if your heuristic is still thinking, okay, you got 2 tall outside corners and 1 short corner on the inside, and then your linebacker, I think you're being a little too rigid. That offenses are understand that a lot of defenses are built that way and are designed to attack offenses built that way. And I personally don't really want to be the one that ends up in that mousetrap. So if your whole thing is that he's not quite 6 foot, which is an arbitrary distinction, and I do think that if your height starts with a 5, people are just going to hate on you a little bit more than if your height starts. If you be 5'11" and 7/8, and people will be like, I don't know, he might be a nickel. But if you go up to 6 foot, people are like, great, outside corner, height will totally play. I don't know. It's what I notice, and I think that's just because it's just like the biases of an even number. Once you get up to the 6 foot range, it just sounds a lot better. But try to catch yourself doing that and really check yourself. 5'11" is a good enough height for a corner. 5'10", starts to be a problem. 5'9", now we're in the Clark Phillips range. We'll talk about him next. But I think the real issue with DJ Turner is the weight is 180. That's pretty light. And you can see it in blocking situations. You can see it in pressing situations. You can kind of ragdoll this dude. That's, I guess, where it comes off. But other than that, which is not the biggest deal in the world, it's not the thing that I'm going to be too mad about, you got a pretty good corner here. Unlike with Deonte Banks, who really struggled to kind of break on the ball in quick game, DJ Turner's great at that. When he's backpedaling, when he's shuffle stepping, he has the footwork that's a little bit more put together and polished. There are some times of it where it's a little chaotic, but I think part of that too is Michigan did not do him any favors and actually asked him to have a pretty hard job. They had him disguising a lot of coverages, especially Ohio State really got the better of him. And I think that Ohio State-Michigan game, this 2022 one, was like the Marvin Harrison Jr. does insane things kind of game. And CJ Stroud was absolutely on it as well. And DJ Turner kind of just got by those guys a little bit, which, like, all right, yeah, he'll do that. And I think part of the reason he got is Michigan was scared of this team and really wanted to try to disguise those coverages and try to make those reads slow down a little bit to give everybody a little more time. And in doing that, it asked DJ Turner to start plays out of position. You have to go get back into position and then, do technique from there. Way, way, way harder to play from that. And it caused his feet to get a little bit chaotic. But in general, he's in zone match a lot. The Michigan Wolverines play a lot of zone match. I mean, this is Jim Harbaugh. He had Vic Fangio on his staff in San Francisco. I think he likes that kind of zone match, zone quarters kind of thing. Eyes on the quarterback, react to the quarterback. And what it means is when you're placing yourself, you're not relating to the receiver as much as somebody like Deonte Banks at Maryland does, who's just like press. Oh, by the way, Deonte Banks, physicality off the charts. I saw him actually push a guy completely off of the line of scrimmage, and that guy just didn't get to run his route. I've never seen that before. Absolutely amazing. But with Turner, you're not going to see that. A lot more off, a lot more zone, a varied role. There were times he backed off into safety. There were times he played nickel, times he played outside. I think he's a defensive back you can put anywhere on the field, wherever you need him, and he will play well. And yeah, that includes if you just need a dude to play outside corner all day, yeah, he can do that. If you've got like a dedicated nickel doing his thing, a Bryce Callahan type, and you just need a dude to just only play outside, I think you can absolutely do that. I don't think you're wasting a big skill set. I don't think you're asking him to be out of position or do anything he's uncomfortable with. I think that just works. But with that zone match thing, what I was getting at is you're kind of placing yourself a lot of times between routes, or you're trying to kind of midpoint things. You're trying to straddle stuff. You're trying to set yourself up to be, I want to be far away from him, but not so far away from him because I got to break on the ball when this gets thrown. But I want him to throw it. I want it to look like, you're trying to bait the quarterback a little bit. And so there's a lot of little tweaks and adjustments. He's a tinkerer sometimes with that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does lead to some inefficient footwork. And I think, he could afford to chill that out a little bit sometimes. But yeah, for the most part, his footwork's fine. The back pedal's fine. The shuffle step's fine. Against OSU, fine wasn't good enough because those dudes are crazy. But, put him up against other Big Ten teams and it felt pretty good. I do think in the NFL, you get a lot more receivers that feel like OSU and not as many receivers that feel like, Purdue or Penn State or whatever. I will say, though, to this, when you're going up against OSU, Ohio State's going to just be a little bit more like the NFL. There's a lot more Marvin Harrison Jr.'s in the NFL and not so many like random jabroni from Penn State's. So I wonder if DJ Turner's going to play a little more conservative. He played really aggressive in how he aligned. He would align very aggressive. And you can really tell how confident a corner is by how much cushion they're given at the line of scrimmage all the time. When he was getting beat by OSU, he started backing that thing way off and, keep everything in front of you and hey, maybe they get a 7-yard catch, but you can at least go make the tackle. He's a very tenacious tackler for whatever it's worth. But that might be an instinct that he has where, okay, I'm like not comfortable. I just had my welcome to the NFL moment, Amari Cooper or whoever just, kicked my ass. I'm going to back this off and play way off. That might just be how his first couple years of his career are, where he's this ultra conservative corner with a bunch of stuff getting caught in front of him, a la Cameron Dantzler. That might just have to be how it works. And then as he gets more confident, he can kind of fold a lot of those skill sets back in. And then I think he can have a decent future. But I think the main thing I want you to know about DJ Turner is that he's not just a nickel. Don't think of him as just a nickel. You want to think about Clark Phillips as just a nickel because he's 5'9". I can at least understand that, even though I still think you're wrong. Just being 5'9" does not make you slot only. It's just too reductive. But 5'11" is good enough for outside corner. DJ Turner can play outside corner just fine. And he's pretty good at squeezing the sideline. I actually think he's pretty good outside, and he has the skill set for it. So don't think of him as slot only. Let's talk about Clark Phillips, though, who's 5'9". It's a much more extreme version of this. And DJ Turner, you can kind of think about as a mellowed out Clark Phillips. So let's take all of this stuff and just like push it to the ends of the earth, and you get this Utah dude. So Clark Phillips out of Utah, the only thing anybody ever talks about with him is that he's 5'9", like a $170. He's very small guy to be playing corner. And you say, oh, well, he's going to have to be the nickel. If this were, 2011 and everyone's slot receiver is somebody who is equally small but like shifty, Clark Phillips would be a perfect nickel only player in that world. Probably would be really heavily devalued because we weren't in 11 personnel all the time quite yet. There's still plenty of fullbacks around, 10, 15 years ago. That would work, but we need to update ourselves. All right. It's time to bring ourselves into the new age. Let us please join me in this decade. Clark Phillips is good at football. His footwork is impeccable. He has some of the best technique in the class. And it's very advanced in the way that when I was gushing about like how Devin Witherspoon sees the field and how heady he is. I think Clark Phillips has that same thing. He knows exactly how much cushion he needs to give. He's recognizing plays. He's guessing. And guessing right. When he shuffles, he gets lots of depth on it. Like it's better than DJ Turner. When he backpedals, he gets lots of depth on it. It's not just a fine backpedal. It's a very, very good backpedal. It's very, very good technique. And what you can see is he can come make a play on the ball. The ball skills are fine. So I guess the question of Clark Phillips becomes, well, why don't we like small corners? Like what problem does being small introduce? And I think there's two main answers to that. One is, contested catch stuff, but only like jump ball contested catches. Contested catches aren't always jump balls. Sometimes there are times where, the receiver's trying to body you out and can you work through him? And yeah, it's going to be easier if you're big and you got a big reach, but Clark Phillips can work through and make that interception or make that play on the ball, make that pass break up through your body. He can do it. So who cares if he's small? He can do the thing that a small corner is not supposed to be able to do. Yeah, sure. If you get Mike Williams on him, jumping over him for a fade route, that's probably going to be an issue. And we should probably factor that in accordingly. But I don't think he should be precluded from being an outside corner because you can flip on his tape at Utah and he plays outside corner and he does everything you need. Here's the other thing. So yeah, part of it is the reach issue, right? And yeah, okay, reach is an issue. Reach is also an issue in the slot though. Again, if you're going to try to take a 5'9" corner and hide him in the slot because you think he's nickel only, they're just going to take their big tall guy and move him in the slot and then like run a seam pattern or something, on the goal line, or run a little spot route and say box him out because you're a basketball player and you got 5 inches on. Like this is going to be a problem everywhere. So I don't think that differentiating between slot and outside with Clark Phillips is actually useful. That size issue will be just as present outside as it will be inside. So you've got the reach thing, and I don't think that I think he does a decent job to mitigate it by having good footwork, good technique, and good ball skills, right? You can only ever mitigate it. You can't fully get rid of it, but I do think he does what he can. The other thing is, can he influence a receiver? Can he be physical? He's got a lot of dog. He's got a lot of try. And sometimes, yeah, he'll get totally bowled over. He's pretty much a non-factor in the run game. But he'll try, but he's, not going to be the guy that's blowing up a fullback or deconstructing lead blockers in any sense. That's just not going to be his game. And you got to just be okay with that. And if anything, that makes him less of a slot because slot corners have to be in the B gap all the time. Outside corners can kind of afford to take run plays off depending on how your fits are constructed. The influencing though, the downfield thing, when you are an outside corner, one of the things you have to do, say you're in cover 2, so you're the outside corner, or when you're the slot, and this is a lot of quarters, a lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 2 ask you to do this. So you have to be able to do this. You have to be able to influence somebody when you're walling. So wall, I also have heard like vertical hook is a word that I've heard for this, but it's a technique where you say you're the slot corner, and the receiver that you're covering is running a deep pattern, and in that coverage, you are not responsible for deep patterns. So you're going to let that guy go, and the safety's going to pick him up, right? That's how the coverage works. In that situation, most coverages and defenses in modern football will have you just throw a shoulder into that guy. Just push him. Try to get him off his spot. Try to get him off his alignment. Screw up his timing. Just go make things harder for him. And you can see Clark Phillips successfully do that outside, inside, wherever. So my Clark Phillips take, I'm really honing in on this because I think people stereotype these corners quite a bit. And a lot of the talk about him, it's the same frustration I had with Josh Downs on yesterday's episode. It's almost the exact same conversation. We go, well, how do small corners tend to work out? Well, maybe, probably not, right? The other small corners have failed. Other small receivers have failed. And yeah, I'm sure you could point to to an Antoine Winfield here or there, Wes Welker here or there, that have succeeded despite being small. And you can say, well, it can happen or whatever. But the frequency with which guys like him have worked out is only ever going to serve as a proxy for actually having an opinion on the guy. And I have an opinion on how the guy works out. And I bet if you took the hit rate of corners who are small and compared it to the hit rate of corners with really good footwork, if somebody was charting that and had that just said, guys with really good footwork traits and really polished stuff, or guys that can read plays. And what I love about Phillips in particular is that he understands how his role interacts with the rest of the defense and with the play call that he is seeing. There's an interception against Oregon that I absolutely love for this, where he has a flat responsibility. He's a cloud. He starts out as a slot corner, and his job is to be the flat under. I want to say it was clouding in cover 3, if I remember. I could be wrong. But the point is he was playing the flat, and Oregon was trying to get a pick on him, a rub, which makes sense. He's the smallest dude on the field. Let's see if we can get a big body wide receiver to kind of run a route, get in his way, bump him off, and then maybe we can make some separation that way. And he slow played it. He didn't try to go through that wide receiver. He just waited and immediately diagnosed what was going on. He waited for that receiver to clear. Then he broke, had the athleticism to push off and actually break on that play. And because he wasn't the read on that play, he's supposed to be picked. The read for the quarterback was the outside corner there. And it's just a matter of if he plays deep enough where this throw, basically like a smoke, like a now route where the receiver barely runs a route. You just kind of turn around and throw it to him. And essentially, if the corner is playing super far off, you just turn and throw that. You don't even think about it. So Clark Phillips has a perfect opportunity, as long as he can wait for that receiver to clear and then have the athleticism to burst and still jump that route, even though it's basically 3 steps and throw. And he was able to do that. Guys who can do that, show me the hit rate of that. You know what I mean? But because it's so much harder to measure, we just don't have as much data on that. And so I can freely hypothesize that I think it's a more useful tool. And at the very least, even if you disagree, if you say, yeah, all that stuff's great, I don't know if he does it in the NFL because he's just going to be too small. That's all fine. But I do want you to still understand that about him, that he's really, really smart. He's really, really polished. He plays like he's 30 and he's been playing that long, right? But he's still, in the body of a young man just coming out with really good athleticism. He's just got a small frame. If that's a super, super deal breaker for you, so be it. But it kind of has to be a deal breaker on its own. And you have to essentially be unwilling to review it with any nuance. You have to just look and say, 5'9", I'm worried about it. And then be done. And I'm just more willing to look at Clark Phillips for that. Here's the thing with all of these guys. If they were a Vikings first round pick, I would be very happy. Even though, this is CB7 and I still would be if he was first round pick, I'd be very happy. I don't think any of these guys are strictly, put into one position or another. I don't think any of these guys are scheme dependent. I think all of these guys can do what the Vikings need them to do. So get one of them, get 2 of them. I would love to get 2 of them. And then, if maybe the second one is somebody like Emmanuel Forbes or Kyle Blue Kelly or somebody who's going to be available a little later, maybe that's what has to happen. But of that kind of top 7, Devin Witherspoon, Joey Porter, Christian Gonzalez, Cam Smith, Deonte Banks, DJ Turner, Clark Phillips, I want one of them. Keely Ringo maybe is an 8th there. That a lot of people will have as CB4 or something. I super disagree. I just don't like his game a lot. But if you could get 2 from that 7-man list, I'd be doing backflips. And even if you get 1 from that 7-man list and then another one, maybe you get Keely Ringo, but in the third, or you get, somebody like what's his name, Travarius Clark or whatever his name is, somebody like that. Maybe, you double dip there. I would absolutely love it. But hopefully the kind of lesson of this one is athleticism is great, but you still have to be able to use it. And B, don't stereotype short corners as slot corners. It just ain't how the world works anymore. Time to update. All right. Facebook is a thing of the past. So is short slot corners. They died around the same time. Let's see what people think about that. Next week on the show is probably still going to be fairly normal. We'll do mock draft Monday on Monday. We'll do Twitter Tuesday. See what else I can look at and watch. I've got a couple people left that I want to watch, but I've mostly talked about the guys that I'm going to talk about in depth, and everything else I'll try to do more piecemeal research so I can cram more guys in under the deadline. I'll see you all for all that stuff. We will go on the journey together. And as always, Skull.